So we are going to move to the next item, which is really response to the University of Hawaii Board of Regents Resolution 19-03. I think the group should know that we were not consulted when this resolution was put together. So many of the comments that you have stated are comments that we agree to, actually. And I think at this point, we're really trying to figure out what kind of comments we do send to the Board of Regents. The meeting is on Wednesday. We're meeting today because we want to be able to submit comments and testimony. And in order to do that, we needed to vote as a board to approve such comments and testimony. I guess at this time, do we want to, anybody want to give comments?
Oh, go ahead, Shane. Take it away.
I was just going to mention that Kahuku Mauna submitted testimony regarding the resolution 19-03 in not supporting the resolution. And one of the biggest, yeah, go ahead.
What is your primary concern with
it? One of the biggest ones was because we weren't consulted either, and that it should be, and that the parties involved with the process on Hawaii Island was not consulted as well. We took a strong position opposing almost the entire resolution, but we did actually point out some significant management. We generally stated that there are some significant impacts on the current management plan, the CMP. And so we felt that they shouldn't rush through this resolution and that they should consult with Kahuku Mauna regarding this.
I can offer a few other comments as well. Thanks, Shane. First of all, specific to the Mauna Kea observatories, we submitted testimony a couple days ago, so it'll go into the public record shortly. Our overarching concern aligns well with what I suspect is everybody's opposition or concern with the reso, and that is lack of consultation here on the Big Island. The observatories had no direct input into the reso before it was published and is being put up for approval in a couple of days. That opens up a variety of other concerns that I'll touch upon here in the sort of a high-level fashion. The observatories are specifically concerned about a set of dates written down for decommissioning facilities that we strongly suspect were not confirmed with those actually responsible for doing the work. For example, we just heard from CSO. Strongly suspect Kahuku Kea has issues with the date written down for them. It's been stated by members of the public here that they're worried about getting it right. So are the observatories. We're not opposed to the decommissioning processes per se underway for CSO, et cetera, but the dates appear artificial, and nobody wants to set up parties responsible for those decommissioning efforts for failure. And these dates should, at a minimum, be looked at and discussed with those actually responsible for pulling those telescopes off the summit of Mauna Kea. Our biggest concern, arguably, is the apparent lack of any coupling between the removal of 5 telescopes with the advancement of TMT. TMT is in a completely uncertain state right now. And the 5 telescopes that are required to be pulled off the mountain through a decommissioning process were explicitly put in the TMT permit as a mitigation package. And failure, if TMT doesn't go forward, we have a lot of concern about the removal of those 5 telescopes is basically a fait accompli as a result of this reso. And an explicit statement in the reso tying the 5 telescopes to TMT going forward would certainly help alleviate our worries about an expectation being set in the community that now we have 5 telescopes no matter what coming off the mountain, whether or not TMT goes forward or not. Our position is that if TMT does not go forward, we fall back to the sub-plan for decommissioning built in the CMP, which calls in net for removal of 3 telescopes. And we'd also like to see a process that is set in place collaboratively with the community to figure out how to do that and which telescopes are involved per se. So we have a number of concerns about these things, particularly with telescope decommissioning, and you'll see that in the presentation, or I'm sorry, the testimony that we've submitted in writing, and I'll be at UHH Wednesday to provide this in person as well. So those are Mauna Kea Observatory's comments. I do have one for the board, to raise for the board, and that I'm concerned procedurally the idea of declaring the decommissioning of telescopes prior to notice of intent approval by this board has me puzzled as to what our function is if we've already kind of received the directive, if you will, from the university. That seems to be kind of skirting an agreed process that is written down in the CMP. And I take that responsibility of starting the decommissioning process with approval or not of notice of intent very seriously. And I just don't understand how that, that declaration, if you will, of removing telescopes basically bypasses potentially our function on the board to be involved with that decision as representatives of the broader community, and for the matter Kahuku Mauna, or for that matter the entire public who can testify through this process too. So I'll leave that as my first open question to the board. Are we being overruled in a sense by the Board of Regents pre-approving these decommissioning steps without going through the Mauna Kea Management Board and the agreed process, which starts with a notice of intent that we approve or don't approve?
I have the same question. I think, unfortunately, the resolution was put together not understanding the process that had been established. To reiterate, the Mauna Kea Management Board was created by the Board of Regents in 2000 as part of the university's Mauna Kea Science Reserve Master Plan. The 2000 Management Plan was officially approved by the Regents and serves as the university's development and governance plan for management of Mauna Kea Science Reserve. Through the master plan, the Board of Regents committed to a community-based management structure whose members are approved by the Regents in public meetings. The Mauna Kea Management Board serves as a community advisory board to the university on matters relating to management and development on Mauna Kea. The 2000 Master Plan references a requirement for community-based management of Mauna Kea. This recognition of home rule was a reason for the establishment of Kahuku Mauna, the Office of Mauna Kea Management, and the Mauna Kea Management Board. At the time of its development, community members were very clear to the university that the Hawaiian concept of kuleana was very important to stewardship of the Mauna. The development of this resolution without consultation of the Mauna Kea Management Board, Kahuku Mauna, and numerous other on-island stakeholders and individuals is inconsistent with the commitment by the Board of Regents to the principle of community-based management. And this will be articulated in our comments to the Regents on Wednesday. I think the other question in my mind is the whole issue of the new educational telescope. There's really no firm commitment on the part of the Regents other than to submit legislation to get the legislature to fund the building of this educational telescope. It was clear at the board meeting, the last meeting, was that we did not approve the notice of intent to decommission Hokukea until there was strong commitment and the funding set aside to replace that educational telescope. So we did not approve the intent to decommission. I think, let's see. And I think the last comment was as far as restructure and changing of the management of the Mauna. Our feeling was that we feel very strongly that it needs to be community-based. It cannot be made up of primarily Oahu people, because it is clear that there have been a lot of additional issues, maybe unintended, but consequences that have not helped the situation. And anybody else? Julie?
So obviously this resolution has caused some consternation, personal as well as on the board, with regards to how it came to be without consultation by entities that should have been consulted in advance. I can somewhat understand why the Board of Regents wanted to move forward the way they wanted to, but I honestly feel that this, if accepted as written, will cause a lot of complications. My other thing was the fact that the legal documents, particularly the decommission plan, that's the legal status document. The reso overrides that. I think that's what it says. That's the way I read it. It seems to supersede it, with no mention of TMT being built or not being built. So the comments that we intend to put forth are not in agreement with the resolution. I really do have an issue with the fact that the meeting is being held on Wednesday for approval of the resolution, only after learning of this in less than a week. I know there's a reason behind it. That doesn't mean I like it. But I think with the comments that we put forth, need to focus on some of the things in there that definitely can't be met, and the dates in particular, there's just no way. That's the first thing that grabbed me. In any case, we'll see what happens on Wednesday.
I'll quickly add, to be clear, the Mauna Kea observatories are requesting deferral of consideration of approval on Wednesday to allow the community and the observatories for time to have input. So that's our official request, if you will, from the Board of Regents.
Yeah, just real quick, I had a question for Doug on the issue of the, does the resolution somehow bypass the NOI process? Would you feel the same way if the resolution was specifically, the clauses in there were specifically tied to TMT, since those conditions are part of the permit?
Yeah, that's water under the bridge, unfortunately. I'm not, I think there's a certain violation of the process in general with TMT going forward, because it is now legally required to remove the 5 telescopes. We have some latitude in the sense of starting that process off through the NOI. But I think in general there is a lack of sequencing per se with what is required now through the permit or through this reso and our function on the board. And that's just built in at this point, I'm afraid.
So I think, like Doug had mentioned, the options we have as a board is to defer voting on the resolution, and I'm thinking to keep the MIG intact to hear all the comments and information before they resubmit or modify the resolution. I'm also hearing that the other option we have is to recommend amendments to the resolution. I'm not sure how everybody feels about that, because to do so, we'd have to put it all together in a day.
Can I share a little bit of the conversations that happened in Mauna regarding trying to amend the resolution, if that's possible? Yeah, so we decided not to. Number one was because of the time constraints that we had, and number two, the entire reso, like almost 90% of the entire reso went against, like you mentioned, went against everything that was set up and approved by the BOR back in like 2000. And we just felt that they decided to almost fast track this process without even notifying the Office of Mauna Kea Management or any of the entities, or even doing a public statement to the public regarding this resolution. And so we just felt that we're just going to strongly oppose it, and that they just got to go to the drawing table, back to the drawing table, and develop something else. We just felt that it was just an downright irresponsible move, honestly. That's kind of what we're saying in our testimony, actually. We're being blunt about it.
What I was going to say is, prior to, for what your comment, Doug's comment, with the action that we should take, if anything, is definitely requesting a deferral of the action on this reso. I just don't see them not. I just see it on the table. It's gonna go, however it's gonna go. The changes, recommended changes that we can make. I mean, we would have to jam this within 24 hours if we wanted subjective change into the reso. But my feeling is that we request a deferral, and that the MIG stay intact until they either make changes to the resolution that are requested by the entities, and revisit it at another BOR meeting.
I agree with Julie. I think we should request a deferral. The consultation process, even if we try and cram together something in 24 hours, it still doesn't feel like a consultation process. So I don't know if we really solved anything other than requesting a deferral of consideration. And if they want to do this, let's get it right. And I don't think that they can really get it right until at least we've had some opportunity to iterate with the board about what we think should be written down in a reso, if there's one written down at all.
I actually, in listening to everyone, I do agree, Shane Kahukumana's position, and I think up until today, in my mind, the recommendation would be a strong request for deferral by this board, and that the MIG continue to exist until all the proper information has been gathered, and that there can be agreement on a resolution to be submitted at a later point in time. It's unclear why they feel they have to vote on this on Wednesday, but it just has not been sufficient time for any community group. I mean, this just got published and they're going to vote in a week or I think 2 weeks, 10-day notice. So very, very concerning. Can I get a motion to submit? Is there a second? Doug, second. Any more discussion? Can we call for the vote? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, vote carried, and we will prepare testimony for Wednesday based on what we've agreed to.